Hey everyone, this is FabryLON. Welcome back. And today we're going to do a big video response to Femtrooper. This is going to be pretty awesome, I have to say, as it's going to be a list. More specifically, my list of my favorite movies from the 80s. As I 100% agree with Paige, as the 80s was a phenomenal decade for movies, and obviously I have quite a DVD collection, and you can see behind me, and naturally a lot of those are from the 80s, so I absolutely needed to do one because I greatly enjoyed the Paige videos. Obviously gonna put the description, the link in the description below. And one thing that I always love about these sort of lists is the fact that you can really tell how different our tastes are. But that's the beauty of it, obviously. I mean, let's not waste too much time here, because there are a lot of DVDs. Because this is technically going to be my top 30, not top 20 movies from the 80s. Simply because there are some movies here that I couldn't mention. I couldn't avoid talking about some of these movies. It would be a criminal not putting these movies in my list. So that's the only difference. I'm going to be 30 instead of 20. So obviously this is going to be a long video. Be prepared for that. But I think I'm really happy with my list. It's going to be awesome. But first and foremost, there is one honorable mention, and I need to talk about this because it's so great. And honorable mention goes to the Giorgio Moroder's version of Metropolis. It's an honorable mention simply because, of course, Metropolis, it's a movie from 1927. It's not from the 80s. However, this specific version was made in 1984, as you can see. And to me, this is the definitive and perfect version of Metropolis. It was amazingly restored, and the genius idea by Moroder, in case you don't know who he is a very famous Italian composer, musician. He did a lot of famous movie soundtracks, for example, like Flashdance, just to name ones, and of course he did this. And the genius behind this is that it's the perfect version of Metropolis, but with 1980s music, which fits perfectly, and it's amazing. The soundtrack, it's fantastic. You got some great songs. One of the most famous is, of course, Love Kills by Freddie Mercury. It was made specifically for this movie. But for the rest, it's the classic Metropolis, one of the greatest sci-fi movies of all time, but with 80s music. So if you're curious about it, go check it out, because to me this is by far the best version of Metropolis you can get. So honorable mention to Moroder's Metropolis. Okay, now let's do this. Number 30. Number 30. We're starting with a chiller here, because I love my horror movies. I love my thrillers. But of course, when I saw this is my favorite movie from this specific series, and that is Manhunter, the movie with the creepiest cover in the world. I mean, you cannot escape this fucking face. It's everywhere. It's on the spine, it's on the back, and of course it's gigantic on the cover. It's creepy as hell. Manhunter, it's, if I remember correctly, it's like the prequel to Silence of the Lamb, which is, of course, if I remember well, like 1990, 1991, and I love that, early 90s, let's say, and I love that movie. But this might be my favorite movie within that universe, because it has my favorite version of Hannibal Lecter, who, it's not played by Anthony Hopkins, played by Brian Cox, who actually is by far the best, absolutely the best Hannibal Lecter. It's a very creepy movie, a lot of suspense, and it's fantastic. So number 30, Manhunter. Number 29, we're moving into Schwarzenegger territory here, which is always a good thing to do, because he embodied the 80s, the cheesy action movies of the 80s, and what better way to start than with Conan the Barbarian, of course. How can you not love this movie? I love also the sequel, The Destroyer, and I was very uncertain between the two, but at the end I said for the fan factor alone, I had to put the Barbarian first. I mean, the camel scene, it's one of the funniest thing I ever saw in movies, with Arnold having fun with his friend and bumping into a camel, and he doesn't know what it is, like, what the hell, and boom, he nails the camel with a punch. And there is a cool reference of that in the second movie, actually. I was really laughing my ass off. There's also the scene with the condor, with the bird, like, trying to eat Arnold, and he starts eating and biting the bird, like, I mean, this James Earl Jones over the top like crazy. It's such a fantastic action fantasy movie, and the 80s are filled with this kind of trashy, but I'm saying this with quotation marks, and especially with as the best possible way, because they might be kind of trashy, but they're all in awesome, cheesy, and there are so many gems in the like fantasy or sci-fi or sci-fi fantasy, mixed the two movies in the 80s. But Conan the Barbarian, I think, is one of the best representative of that genre, and it's a fantastic action movie and a unforgettable performance by Arnold. Number 28. As I said before, I like horror movies, but not every horror movie. There are some movies I like, some I don't, but when I saw this, I was captured by it. Maybe, and it's not a coincidence, because that one is Videodrome by David Cronenberg. Probably this is my favorite movie by him. This is such a weird, trippy movie, almost oniric, I would say, but I love it. I will never forget the Death to Videodrome, long live the new Flash. I mean, there are some twisted stuff in this movie, but it's not the worst thing you'll see by Cronenberg. But by the end, the arm with the gun, all of it's so weird, but it's amazing stuff. I mean, those practical effects from the 80s are gold. And who is it? James Wood. It's really good. I'm blanking on a moment. James Wood is really good. The soundtrack is really haunting in this movie, and this whole weird story, the pulsating VHS. Oh, it's so awesome. So definitely number 28, Videodrome. How can you not love Videodrome or Cronenberg? Number 27, this might be a surprise for most of you that it's as low as it is on my list, but it's simply due to the fact that I prefer other movies from the 80s. That it's Back to the Future Part 2, of course, my favorite of the trilogy. What can you say about Back to the Future as hasn't been said already? I mean, I love these movies, like, absolutely. One, it's a charming time travel comedy, but I think 2 really was the most interesting, because it explored like what happened when you mess up with time travel, like with the just do something might change everything, and then you have this alternative apocalyptic future and all of that. Absolutely loved it. Of course, like, you got some of the most likable characters with Marty McFly, Doc Brown. Biff is one of the best villains. Hello, anybody home? I mean, fantastic stuff. It's only number 27 on my list, but I absolutely love it. I have to be honest, I haven't watched this in a while now, but I probably have to. But love Back to the Future. Number 26, we got a absolute must. I love this. Again, one of my favorite horror movies, but this is horror / comedy, and how can you not have in your 80s movies Evil Dead 2? The movie that defined the Evil Dead series, that probably really defined Bruce Campbell as his character of Ash. I mean, the effects were great considering the low budget of the trilogy. The one-liners, the comedy. I mean, at one point this movie, it's just hilarious. The scene with like the dead moose laughing, everything going crazy in that mansion. Bruce Campbell chopping off his own hand. And of course the one-liners and the immortal scene with him with the chainsaw and the boomstick saying groovy, all of that. I mean, this is a must. I mean, I'm not saying the dates, but I'll see what I can do. I mean, if it's necessary, I don't know, because obviously these are all from the 80s. This is 87, but one of my favorite horror movies. But as I say, there's also a lot of comedy in here, and an absolute must. Evil Dead 2. Now we're moving to, let's see if I can find it. 1982, we're to the early 80s, and I think this again, it's a must from the 80s if you like science fiction, and especially if you like video games. You might probably imagine, of course, I'm talking about the original Tron. How can you not have this movie? I mean, this was mind-blowing. I saw it many years ago. In 82, I wasn't even alive still, so I wasn't born yet. But I watched this very young and then bought the collection with the... Also, I love Tron Legacy. And I'm still waiting for a third Tron movie. But like, the effects were mind-blowing. The entire concept of this movie, it's fantastic. I mean, absolutely a phenomenal sci-fi movie from the early 80s. And I absolutely love Tron. So great. Number already lost the count. Number 24. This might be my favorite horror movie, or one of my favorite. It's difficult to say. It's between this and another one, which is higher on the list for the 80s factor, but as a horror movie, it's really close, if it makes sense. In my head, it does, but again, if you're doing a list about 80s movies, how can you not have John Carpenter, of course? He was the king of the 80s. And obviously, in terms of horror movies and John Carpenter, how can I not mention The Thing? I love this movie. As I said, potentially this might be my favorite horror movie. I mean, the practical effects on that fucking creatures are amazing, disturbing, and twisting. It's so great. Kurt Russell is a badass, amazing, like always. The soundtrack, it's so good. The whole atmosphere of this movie, it's the perfect horror experience. I mean, they're in the South Pole, they're all alone, no help is coming, the apocalypse is there, the twist at the end, it's brilliant, and especially that scene when they're drinking and then the music starts. That main theme of the thing, it's just phenomenal. One of the best horror score you can get. But just look at this. Fantastic, absolutely. John Carpenter, it's my third favorite John Carpenter movie, and absolutely love The Thing. 1982, I think. Yes, 1982. We're moving back to early 80s again, 1980, and this movie was just perfect when I saw it for the first time. Then I rewatched it multiple times. I mean, it combines my love for 80s movies, 80s comedy, and 80s music. And that, of course, the Blues Brothers. What can you say about the Blues Brothers? I mean, John Belushi, then Aykroyd are, of course, perfect together. We all know it. This is one of the finest comedy from the 80s, in my opinion. And I just love the characters of the Blues Brothers. Always want to, like, at least once in my life to dress like them. I mean, since I was a kid, I always thought they were so cool with the suit, the sunglasses, and the hat. As I said, they were the epitome of cool to me. And of course, the songs. I mean, I own the soundtrack, and those songs are phenomenal. I mean, absolutely phenomenal stuff. And the whole, I don't know, like the whole console, like, we're on a mission from God. And I still remember when Elwood says that with Aretha Franklin, and she's all angry, like, "Don't you blaspheme here! Don't you blaspheme here!" Before singing that amazing Think song, which is so good. The whole scenes with Carrie Fisher are hilarious. Like, it wasn't my fault. What was it? All the excuses is hilarious. This overly jealous girlfriend trying to kill Belushi, Jake, I think. but all the scenes, all the songs, this is the perfect 80s musical movie. One of the best, one of my favorites. There's only one which is tiny better in my opinion, but it's hard to say. Again, maybe the 80s cheese factor is a bit stronger in the other one, but this is an absolute must. Number 22, 1981. We got a classic. When I watched it as a kid, I absolutely loved it, because this was basically what I was playing when I was not watching movies or playing video games, but at the same time, like playing games such as Zelda and then watching a movie like this. Obviously, I was just dreaming of being a knight, fighting monsters or witches or stuff like that, especially after you watched Excalibur. This is a fantastic version of the Arthurian myth, and I absolutely loved it. I still remember like the scene, the final battle, and it's such a fascinating, of course, legend, the whole King Arthur, Excalibur, and everything. And I think it's still the best version of this movie. Is the best version of the whole story. Unfortunately, I haven't watched this in a long time. I really want to now that I hold it in my hand, because it's such a classic. Absolutely love it. But considering like how much I loved fantasy in both in books and movies and video games, so there's no wonder that I absolutely love this movie from the 80s. Watching it as a kid, it had a huge impact. But Excalibur, 1981, fantastic movie. Number 21. Number 21. We're moving to 1986, and also another genre of movies that I absolutely love is war movies. Absolutely, since I always loved history, especially military history, so I've always been very, very much into war movies. And naturally, there was a long period of time where Vietnam War movies were the only kind of war movies we were getting, due to the entire so many controversies connected to that war. It's so fascinating, especially for American society, but also from us Europeans, for example. So interesting to read about such a tragic conflict. However, when you talk about Vietnam War movie and the 80s, naturally the first thing comes to mind. It's Platoon by Oliver Stone. Fantastic performances by both Charlie Sheen and William Dafoe. Obviously now there are like, I'm making this long video, there are like 3 sirens one after the other, but it's not one of my videos without sirens, right? Obviously in the cover you can see the iconic scene from this movie with William Dafoe getting shot down by the Viet Cong. Has been parodied so many times. But yeah, this is a really, really intense movie. Really like the idea, like this soldiers getting crazy, or completely one of the theme that they always explore with, especially the first time I saw it, to say, with the Vietnam War, but I know it's very common in other war movies. It's a dehumanization of the soldiers, that by the end, after experiencing the brutality and the craziness of war, they're completely devoid of emotions. They're just killing machines, and we'll talk about that with another movie, which you might imagine what. But Platoon, it's just a phenomenal movie. It's a phenomenal movie about the Vietnam War, and an absolute must if you like war movies. A great soundtrack as well, like the music when Defoe is being killed, it's so powerful. Number 20, it's one of the few movies I cannot show you because I don't own it in DVD still. I have an old VHS recorded from television, but it's in Italy, it's not even here. And I was thinking, while I was thinking about this list, I was like, is there a Ray Harryhausen movie from the 80s? And of course there is. 1981, Clash of the Titans. It's 1981, right? I have my list here. I just need to be sure. Let's see. Of course, I cannot find it. Clash of the 81. Yes, it was correct. Sorry about that. Because obviously Ray Harryhausen didn't direct the movie, but he made it was the guy behind the special effects. Of course, he was so influential, so amazing with that sort of special effects, like models and all of that. I even have a book there on him. Since years ago, there was an exhibition at the London Film Museum, or whatever it was called at the time, which it had all huge models on, I don't know, the Hydra or the Skeletons, and of course like the Medusa from Clash of the Titans, the Kraken, all of that. I mean, with this, I love fantasy, and to combine like the ancient mythology with fantasy in that fashion. It was just, as a kid, that thing blew my mind, obviously, with those effect on the monster. I mean, you gotta love Ray Harryhausen. It's legendary for a reason. Perhaps in the grand scheme of things, I prefer Jason and the Argonauts over Clash of Titans, but of course that's from the 60s or something, so it doesn't count. But Clash of Titans is such a classic, amazing movie, and I own the remake. It's there somewhere. It was alright. It's obviously, it doesn't have the same weight of the original, but it's still a fun remake, and it's all CGI. It doesn't have the same magic. But number 20, definitely Clash of the Titans, timeless classic there. Number 19, we're still in 1981. Yeah, still 1981, and again, this series was, it defined the 80s, and absolutely one phenomenal action movie from the decade. It has to be Mad Max, The Road Warrior. Such a jump from the original. I mean, when I watched the first Mad Max, I was like, this is different from what I expected. Then I watched Road Warrior, I was like, oh, there you go, this is the Mad Max I was imagining. I also love Thunderdome. Obviously, I love Fury Road, but this is such a fantastic movie. I mean, the effects, the costumes, Mel Gibson kicking ass, the post-apocalyptic world, everything. I mean, this is the movie that really defined what Mad Max was all about, and had such a huge impact on action movies, and in general, we say, on post-apocalyptic fiction, which it was not created by this, but I think this really boosts the genre into the stratosphere, because this is such a phenomenal action movie. Cannot wait to watch it again. I haven't watched it in years, but love it. Love it. The Road Warrior. Fantastic action movie. And moving to 1985, this is something that really defined my childhood, and all of us childhoods, I will suppose. How can you not have at number 18 The Goonies? I mean, I remember watching this movie, and immediately after, I wanted to go out in the woods and explore the woods, living great adventures and finding pirate ships and treasures and all of that. That was the effect on this movie on me. I remember, like, with my brother and my cousin, we drew maps, put them in the oven so the paper will become yellowish, and it looked kind of old. We put them in a chest or in the closet or something. It's like, oh, look, I found an old map. We might find a treasure here. I mean, it really sparkled your imagination. And this really, it's also like such a timeless adventure with these really likable kids, with I don't know, the one with the gadgets, the nerd, and all. There are all the stereotypes, and then like it's as I said, it's just classic with like the soundtrack, the song by Cyndi Lauper. It's awesome. Absolutely love the Goonies. As I say, this is a staple from my childhood. It has to be here, and who doesn't love the Goonies? I mean, 1985, as I said. Goonies, number 18, yes. And number 17, we're returning to a music-focused movie here, and the only thing that to me can surpass the Blues Brothers, it has to be, this is Spinal Tap. Wow, I loved it. It is such a amazing fake documentary on the 1980s rockish metal music. It's the misadventures of this fictional band, which is so funny. The music is fantastic. The characters are hilarious. I still remember some of the parts, like the whole like the shark sandwich shit sandwich album. It was, I think, like a sort of like a black album that was supposed to be the resolution of all the problems. The Curse with the Drummers, the fall of the Spinal Tap. This is an hilarious movie, and it's such a phenomenal fake documentary. I mean, everyone must watch This Is Spinal Tap, 1984. Number 16, another staple from my childhood. I remember watching this movie as a little kid, and I was already into video games at the time, and as I said, also love history. So when I saw this, I was absolutely in love with it, and that is Wargames. Such a cool movie. I really enjoyed it. I know it's kind of Matthew Broderick. It's not the most popular actor around, but I didn't care at the time, of course. I just enjoyed the story. And this kid is thinking, he thinks he's playing a game, but in reality he's bringing the world, like the US and the Soviet Union, to the brink of nuclear war. Was brilliant. And also love at the end when it makes the computer realize the futility of war. It says like no one wins. Fantastic stuff. And I remember like in Ready Player One, I love the idea in the book because I haven't saw the movie. I wasn't really interested in that. In the book, when I read the whole part that they had to recite the movie line by line, I loved it. So, oh, that's genius with War Games. I'm so happy because this was a big part of my childhood. Number 15, we're halfway there. And again, this has to be there, another staple of my childhood. We're moving to the late 80s, 1981. How can this not be on my list? The original Batman, of course, by Tim Burton with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson. Still my favorite Batman movie, though I love The Dark Knight, but this, mainly for nostalgia, it's my Batman. Watch it as a kid. I was probably like 4 years old or something, and absolutely loved it. I love its darkness. I love Jack Nicholson, of course. Like, what's your master plan? My face on the $1 bill. So it's just genius. All like the scene, Bob, when he shot Bob. I mean, hilarious stuff. But I love how Gotham, it's represented very dark, very gothic. Michael Keaton is perfect as Batman. I think he might be my favorite Batman still. So phenomenal movie and an absolute must. Batman. And oh yeah, we're moving back to Arnold here for one last time, and I think this. Oh no, not once. There's one more yet, but. Back to Arnold, again, always a good thing to do. And back to 1985 with what might be my favorite all-out action movie. I mean, it has to be this. How can you not? I mean, this is such an amazing movie. Commando. How can you not? Who doesn't love Commando? This movie is fucking hilarious. I mean, there are too many memorable quotes. Just like one of my favorites is the one like, "This Green Beret's gonna kick your ass." I mean, "I eat Green Beret for breakfast." I mean, it was phenomenal. And the final battle with Barrett and Arnold was like, "I don't need the girl. I don't need the gun. I'm gonna kill you." And I was like, "Oh my god." And he throws the pipe with all the steam coming. It's like, blow off some steam, but it's just like hilarious. Yeah, please don't disturb my friend. He's that tired. Just thinking about Commando makes me laugh so much. With John Matrix, as I said, this is absolutely one of my favorite Arnold movie, one of my favorite action movies of all time, and you cannot have this if you like. if you love 80s action movie, this is absolutely the best. I mean, the final battle in the compound where Arnold is annihilating 1,000 soldiers all by itself. I mean, it's amazing. There's so much 80s here. Commando, absolutely phenomenal. Number 13. Before I mentioned with the thing that it's my co-favorite, basically, horror movie, or at least one of my favorite horror movie, and this is the other one I was talking about. Absolutely, still to this day, this is my favorite zombie movie. It's difficult to say between this and what came before this movie, but at the end of the day, I think this might be it, and it's by George Romero, Day of the Dead, even over Dawn of the Dead, because that is from the 70s, by the way, but Day of the Dead might be my favorite of both the zombie trilogy, Dead trilogy by Romero, and in general, I think this is the pinnacle of zombie movies. You got a fantastic setting. I love the fact that most of the movie takes place underground. It gives such a claustrophobic feeling. The fact there is this crazy bunch of people, and in a way it's like the humans are again being dehumanized. Like the zombies are almost like the victim in a way in this movie. Not really, but you can see that these humans are just going crazy, insane. There are just a couple of good characters in here. It has by far the best female character in this series. It has one of the best villains from the 80s. Captain Rhodes, played by Joe Pilato. He is amazing in this movie. It's one of the reasons why it stands out so much. It's his performance. It has a great music. You got Bob, of course, this sort of Frankenstein. There's Dr. Frankenstein, this mad scientist who's trying to rehumanize zombies in a way. And then you had Bob. Phenomenal zombie movies. The practical effect and the gore, it's really at the peak, I think, of this before CGI and all of that. Fantastic movie. If you like zombie movies, this is an absolute must. Say Dawn of the Dead, it's always hailed as the best, but I think Day of the Dead might beat it out. So absolutely at number 13, Day of the Dead. Number 12, speaking of, like, before with the Goonies saying, like, with adventures and all of that, this also had such a massive influence on me. And at number 12, we got Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indiana Jones, of course. My favorites of the trilogy. I haven't watched Crystal Skull yet, but I'm in no rush to watch that. And Indiana Jones was such a big deal for me as a child, as it was for most of us, of course. We all grew up with Indy. We all loved the adventure, the music, of course, the main theme. I always loved very, very much the Temple of Doom as well. But at the end of the day, I think this is the best, also because obviously you got Nazis as the villains instead of that crazy cult in India. They're getting like their Lost Ark. I mean, I know that a lot of people will say that Last Crusade is the best, but I think that might be my least favorite of the three, even though it's a great movie, of course. But Raiders of the Lost Ark, absolutely, it's the first one I saw. It blew my mind. It's the greatest Indiana Jones movie of all time, of course. And I wonder how many people became archaeologists just to do Indiana Jones stuff and realize that it's not really like this. The life in archaeologists is not as exciting. But number 12, one of the best adventure series of all time, Indiana Jones, of course. Number 11, it's another one actually that I cannot show you because I don't have the DVD here, but it's in Italy. And that is Good Morning Vietnam, one of my favorite movies by Robin Williams. Watched that as a kid, absolutely adored that movie. I say, like, Robin Williams gave a phenomenal performance as Adrian Cronauer. And I also love the fact that it's music. It's such a pivotal, almost a character on its own, this movie. because I love music so much, of course. So obviously, like music, I always mention like soundtracks or music heavy movies because I love music so much. And Good Morning Vietnam has such a fantastic soundtrack, all those classic songs, and the scene, of course, when they play What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong, with all the violence going on with this crazy war. It's just, it's so strong, it's so beautiful. Of course, like the humor, it's great by Cronauer. Like the other officers, how important such what you might think the secondary, like a military radio DJ, actually was, like for the morale of the American soldiers. But it's, as I say, it's a wonderful performance by Robbie Williams. It's a fantastic soundtrack, and there are some really great moments. So number 11, Good Morning Vietnam, fantastic movie. We're entering the top 10. We're almost there. Hang in there, guys. Number 10, we're returning to John Carpenter, of course. And this is my second favorite John Carpenter movie. And how can it not be here? I mean, I've watched this so many times. It never gets old. I always love this. They Live with Roddy Piper. This movie. This is actually a brilliant movie. On how much we are slaves to advertisement and consumism and all of that. And then there's Roddy Piper giving a performance of a lifetime. What's the name of his character? I don't remember it. Oh well. Obviously there's the iconic scene, like, I am here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I'm all out of gum. For a video game fan as me, of course, I remember, I say, wait a second, when I played Duke Nukem, I say, wait a second, that is from They Live, what's going on? But the whole concept of these aliens living among us, and only he can see the truth because of the sunglasses, and it's a brilliant and really intelligent movie, regardless of this cheesiness and craziness. But if you never watched They Live, shame on you. Go get it immediately, because I think you can find the DVD for next to nothing. And I think, even though I don't care about Blu-rays, but on the Blu-rays there is a whole interview and commentary by Roddy Piper. Such a legendary guy. I love Roddy Piper. But number 10, They Live. Phenomenal movie. Number 9, we got the first tie here. Because I really couldn't make up my mind which one of these two movies I prefer, and I don't know. I don't have the answer here. When I think about Star Trek movies, it's always between these two, and they're both amazing for different reasons. I love both of them equally, but I cannot make up my mind between Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, and Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. Absolutely love them both. Wrath of Khan, of course, it's a fan favorite. It's phenomenal. This is Star Trek at its peak, but Voyage Home, it's also amazing. Naturally, to fully appreciate, you also have to watch The Search for Spock, which is the second one in this trilogy, which I really enjoyed. But of course, it's squeezed between the two best of the entire series. I really don't know. They're both phenomenal. Leonard Nimoy did such a fantastic job in here, and also like the battle at the end of the movie. The character of Khan is just perfect. Amazing movies from an amazing series. Of course, I love the original series movies so much. They're absolutely my favorite Star Trek movie, and these are the best. I love all of them. I mean, from the motion picture to the Undiscovered Country, but I think Wrath of Khan and Voyage Home best represents Star Trek to me. At number 8, let me just check. Yes, number 8. I just don't want to lose count now that we're close to the end. Gotta have a Stanley Kubrick movie here. And I was really conflicted between The Shining and this one, which actually beat it out. Because I love The Shining, but as an 80s movie, to me, this really did the job. I mean, because I watched this much earlier than The Shining, by the way, so I'm a bit more nostalgic. I mentioned before my love for history, and this is simply one of the best war movies of all time, without a doubt. Obviously, Full Metal Jacket, a masterpiece of an anti-war movie, and as I said, easily one of the best war movies ever made. Like most people, I would admit I prefer the first half of the movie, so the boot camp, over the war. But the war, it's amazing when they actually go to Vietnam. I mean, the final scene when they're like marching with all the flames and they're singing like the March of Mickey Mouse, that's surreal to say the least. But of course, most of the most iconic scenes are from the first part of the movie, the boot camp. I mean, there's Sergeant Artman just spewing insults like a machine. It's like hilarious. Especially, like, I remember it for the most part in Italian, but obviously I watch it in English and all that. In Italian, it's phenomenal. It's a meme on its own, basically, in Italian. Obviously, there's the fats of what's it called? I don't even remember in English. I remember in Italian, like Paladilardo. The fat soldiers, obviously, that goes completely insane by the end of the boot camp. And that iconic scene, like 9mm Full Metal Jacket, and obviously the again surreal scene is like, I already live in a world of shit, before killing. I mean, nothing like Full Metal Jacket, I think, represents the dehumanization caused by war to these individuals, and it's one of Stanley Kubrick's best movies, without a doubt, to me. I mean, they're all great, obviously, but Full Metal Jacket, so good, so good. At number 7, yes, number 7, we got another tie, both of them in the top 10, but of course, because we got the best of the best, the king of the crop. And again, I was thinking I have to have a Akira Kurosawa movie in my list, because not only is one of my favorite directors, he's one of the best directors of all time, especially of the 20th century. So I looked like, which are his movies from the 80s? And there are only 2, and I couldn't make up my mind again. How can you say which one is better between Run and Kagemusha? They're both masterpieces. Because I was thinking, I love the idea behind Run, behind Kagemusha. It's such a great movie. And I say, but Run is so cool. I mean, this is one of his reinterpretations of Shakespeare. This is King Lear with samurais, basically. It's amazing stuff. Kagemusha, it's a brilliant idea. So I really don't know. I mean, with Akira Kurosawa, samurai's movie, how can you go wrong? And from the 80s, they're both phenomenal. Oh, this one won an Oscar, actually. I don't remember that. But anyway, so I got distracted. I was reading like all the awards they both win. Amazing movies. Maybe I might say I prefer the idea behind Kagemusha, but Run, it's so good, so good. I mean, both fantastic. So at number 7, we got Kagemusha from 1980 and Run from 1985, but I really cannot pick one between these two. They're both amazing. You have to choose it for yourself, but in my opinion, they're at the same level of amazingness, awesomeness. I absolutely love Kurosawa. Number 6, a personal favorite movie of mine. Easily one of the best, like this dystopic future kind of movie, Brazil. Easily the best movie by Terry Gilliam. I love everything about this crazy bureaucratic, technocratic society. The scene with the surgeon, like with the skin going all over there, like Bob Hoskins doing that, what is like a sort of plumber or something, I don't remember. But this is such an really weird, but at the best, I'm saying weird, in the best possible way. It's a very surreal movie, and if you never watch Brazil, it's like easily it's one of my favorite movies of all time, and also easily one of the best movies from the 80s, and one of the best sci-fi movies ever made. It's just perfection, I think. It's very surreal, but so great, and that song, that Brazil song, it really gets stuck in your head. DVDs are falling. Top 5. We're finally almost there. Almost there. And number 5, we got my favorite Robin Williams movie. And watch this as a kid. It had such a huge impact on me. And obviously, Dead Poets Society. Such a moving movie. A moving experience, such like a lovable cast of characters, starting from Robin Williams as Professor Keating. You got the fantastic cast with like Robert Sean Leonard, Josh Charles. I mean, I'm completely blank of Ethan Hawke. I mean, but these high school boys being influenced by this amazing teacher on living their lives the best possible way, and the whole thing with the carpe diem, seize the day, like since I say life is short, life is too damn short, you have to do the best you can with your life. It was so great. I mean, watch it as a kid. I'll watch this movie till the end of my days because it's such an inspirational movie, and the final scene, it's so good. And you might say kind of negative in a way, but in reality it's such a positive ending, because at least the students who really absorb his teaching, they got it. I mean, mission accomplished in a way. I don't want to say too much because but this is such an emotional movie. I absolutely loved it. It has a big impact on me as a kid, and I watched it so many times. And easily Robin Williams' best and most memorable performance to me. Dead Poets Society. Got DVDs all over the place here. Number four. For the last time, we're into Schwarzenegger territory. Of course, you must imagine what I'm about to show you. And easily one of my favorite action movie. Easily one of my favorite sci-fi movie. Naturally, from 1984, The Terminator. My favorite of the series. Yes, I prefer the first one over the second one. And wow, I saw this movie a long time ago and it blew my mind. As I said, this is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I cannot get enough of this. Arnold is perfect as the evil Terminator, as it's just like this emotionless, brute killing machine. Michael Biehn and Linda Hamilton, I was blanking on her name, are both amazing. I mean, Michael Biehn does. I really liked his performance because as a kid, I believed his story. I really wanted him to succeed in saving Sarah Connor to avoid the horrible future, the machine killing the humans. Easily, one of my favorite action sci-fi movies of all time, and I absolutely love The Terminator. So good, so good. Number three. Moving all the last DVDs here. Again, one of my favorite action movies of all time, because I love action movies. What can I say? And my favorite John Carpenter movie of all time, and I cannot say enough how much I love this movie. Of course, from 1981, Escape from New York. Everything about this movie, it's perfection to me. I mean, from Kurt Russell's performance as Jake Plissken, Snake. I love the fact, like, every time, like, hey Snake, it's Plissken. Plissken, call me Snake. I mean, it is the embodiment of coolness to me. When I was a kid, I think nothing is as cool as Snake. He's like the ultimate movie anti-hero and badass to me. even in Escape from LA, though people don't like it as much, even I don't like it as much as this, because this is a masterpiece, I think. But Escape from LA, I still love it. And Snake, it's cool anyways. But in here, there's Lee Van Cleef, who I absolutely love as this Manhattan prison warden, is great. There's Donald Pleasence as the president, I love Donald Pleasence. And Isaac Hayes as the Duke is a phenomenal villain. The soundtrack is great, the action is great, the combination of various genre, because it's sci-fi, it's action, it's post-apocalyptic, all together. And it's filled with crazy character, and the concept, it's so cool. It's absolutely my favorite John Carpenter movie, one of my favorite movies of all time, and number 3 on my list. Number two, you might be surprised it's only number 2, but no doubt in my mind, obviously, number 2, it has to be from 1980, Empire Strikes Back. Star Wars 5, obviously the best Star Wars movie ever made. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and to me this was the pinnacle of the series. It's the perfect second chapter of a trilogy, and there's so many memorable moments, all the characters, the new ones and the old ones. It's just the perfect package of a Star Wars movie. Of course, I mean, I don't need to talk too much about Empire. We all love it. It's most people's favorite Star Wars for a reason. I mean, I love Return of the Jedi, of course, it's still from the 80s. Loved it, but there are things that I don't like that much in Return of the Jedi. Especially, I fucking hate the Ewoks. I really hate those little bastards, but this was perfection to me. One of my favorite movies of all time, from one of my favorite series of all time. At number 2, Star Wars 5, Return of the Jedi, Empire Strikes Back. Timeless classic. We made it. We're finally at number 1. What could it be? Even more than Star Wars as my favorite movie from the 80s. And I think there's no doubt in my mind. What else could it be? We're moving to 1982 with one of the greatest movies ever made. One of my favorite movies of all time. This is like top 3 material, basically, in my mind. It's like, as I said, one of my favorite movies of all time. And of course, it has to be like the best movie from the 80s to me. Blade Runner. No questions there. I mean, this is the final cut, whatever, but the movie is the same, of course. But this is perfection. I mean, the more I watch this movie, the more I like it. Every time I watch it, there are some details I discovered. I love everything about it, like this setting, this depressing, gigantic city in this very dystopic future. The characters, of course, Harrison Ford did a phenomenal job, but Rutger Hauer also is Roy Batty is also a phenomenal antagonist. That scene with the pigeon, like, I've seen things you wouldn't imagine. The music by Van Helsing, it's unbelievable. Easily the best movie by Ridley Scott. And without a doubt, my favorite movie from the 80s. I watched it so many times, as I said, I will watch it till the end of my day again, because this is a perfect, absolutely perfect movie, and without a doubt, my favorite movie from the 80s, Blade Runner. We've done it. Very long video, I realize, but a lot of movies. So let's just cut the chase. These were my top 30 movies from the 80s. Definitely check Paige's original video. As I said, I'm gonna put the link below. Definitely do video responses. What are your favorite movies from the 80s? Because it's easier to do like top movies of all time, but to squeeze that to a specific decade, that was a very interesting idea. Well done, Femtrooper. So that's it for me. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this list. Let me know what you think. I'll see you next time. Take care.